take inventory of where things are and what it would take to get to the two various options.
And thank you, Mr. Lake. In summary, where we stand today, and Phil, and Mr. Maple, you can correct me if I'm wrong, we have a mediated settlement that for the Finley-Rama Road service area requires the township, per its 537 plan, to construct a grinder pump system connecting to Peters Creek Sanitary Authority. It's a township project, township funded, ownership, operation, and maintenance identified in the 537 plan, okay? At the same time, the key element towards the end of that process was that the township didn't want to take a step back, if you will, wanted to keep moving forward relative to implementation. And the thinking was that switching to a gravity lift station option, the township would have to revert back to the 537 planning phase,
Hey, please shut your phones off.
amend that 537 plan, amend the permits before acquiring the rights of ways and the other items needed to move forward with construction. That was the township's concern. What we reviewed with Peters Creek Sewer Authority, and it's detailed in this letter, and requests this meeting, is that just based on a couple items, and I'll refer back to the table that's attached, color-coded table. And my first point is that there are 19 properties. If you'll see the first column, it says GP number, grinder pump number, okay? There are 19 properties. In the 537 plan dated January 2020, prepared by Senate engineers, approved by the 537 plan, there's 19 properties identified in there, okay? The Part 2 permit, okay, after planning, then you proceed to the permitting phase with the department. The drawings and supporting information that were submitted with the Part 2 permit is that middle column. And that was around August 10th, 2021 that we got from Harshman in December. And so, as you can see, the comparison between the first two columns, the 19 properties identified for service, there are 3 highlighted in blue. 2 citations of 3976 in the Nike site. That was identified in the 537 plan. In the permitting drawings that were submitted to DEP, the Nike site was identified as a service parcel. 3976 was still a service parcel. However, 9 Rob Lane was added as a customer per that DEP permit submittal, okay? And so the difference between blue and red is a difference of a couple customers between the two. And then fast forward later on, or in March of 2022, when the drawings were forwarded to PennDOT for the highway occupancy permit, 9 Rob Lane was still in that customer count, but there are 2 other structures included there, and that includes 26 Rob Lane and 30 Rob Lane. And so, at each step of the way, when you go through the planning process, when you go through the permitting process, and then you go through the right-of-way acquisition and the construction process, this customer base should be consistent. What you're planning, what you're permitting for, and what you're designing. Our point to Peters Creek Sanitary was that irrespective if the township moving forward, they would need to revert back to the planning criteria if this far left column is the column that the township intends to sewer, That Act 537 plan was being updated to reflect that. And so, my point was, from this point moving forward with the settlement agreement, the timeline between a grinder pump system or a gravity and lift station system is the same, because the township will need to revert back to clarify these items. And so that was our point that we wanted to convey to you, that in the best interest of potential future Peters Creek Sewer Authority customers, although no one wants to take a step back, irrespective either way, we need to move forward with planning. So the implementation schedule wouldn't be any different if we were to change that approach now based on what Mr. Levy had summarized earlier, and our board's strong perspective that a grinder pump and lift station system would be more advantageous to our future customer property values. And that was a key element that we discussed at length in December and at our January board. And they're very, very strong in that regard. Of course, a very good board with a lot of different backgrounds, a lot of different interests, including real estate interests. One of our representatives is a realtor that has a very strong opinion in terms of sewage. If you hear on lot, that means one thing. If you hear grinder pump, that means another. If you hear that a gravity system connects with the Peters Creek Sewer Authority, that means another thing in terms of property value. So that's the essence of this letter. That's kind of the purpose of why we asked for this meeting, to convey that to you. In terms of the dialogue during that settlement, we have some of the construction drawings that are here. Those aren't really construction drawings. Those are permit level drawings. They're schematic drawings that, be candid, and in fact will need to be approved. But they're not ready for construction, based on my experience. 30 years in the business related to, implementing, sewage facilities.
Can you show that have you seen those drawings?
I have not. Yes, if we've got a copy here, we're willing to share those with TJ, that's not a problem. And so, before they were submitted to DP, no, we didn't review them. We got those permit drawings and the Part 2 permit and the HOP drawings after they were submitted during the mediation.
Was there an agreement between the township and your firm, or your authority, about the sewage system?
No.
Was there an agreement?
There was a order of court in which the drawings and the agreement were supposed to be produced, but they never were produced.
But usually, from my experience, when you do a sewage system, like Canton Township did with Legion, we enter into an agreement between the township and Legion about the cost and everything else. Was that ever done?
No, that was part of the reason for the litigation, is because we didn't have an agreement between the two entities.
Should have been.
Yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
and we'd asked repeatedly for Union Township to draft that copy, and they were remiss, and they were provided.
I've dealt with your firm back in Larry Lennon.
Yeah, I'm part of it.
I dealt with it before, I dealt with him back in the '90s. And so, the sewage and water. I dealt with him, I dealt with banks. Usually you do these systems. If I'm going to extend a line or expand the system into in Canton Township or South Spain, just like South Spain recently, we enter into an agreement between the township and in that situation there is, again, Legion.
It's similar to a developer's agreement. Developer
Same
Nelson
thing.
North says they want to develop this area. One of the first
Same
things we do,
thing.
we put an agreement. That never happened, and everything was done in a vacuum without any PCSA.
And I did that back here when we did the El Ramos sewage project back. And again, is that Bankston or I don't know, it wasn't Bankston, some other firm. But we did an agreement between Louisa, right? And Jefferson Hill Borough, I had to do a capacity agreement, and I had to do, because Jefferson Hill, the line with sewage went through their system,
Correct.
and then I had to do it with Louisa. Yeah, that's it.
Well, Mr. Michael, that was the whole purpose of the litigation between us and Union Township. That was resolved with the grinder pump issue. But just so the record is clear, it was the position of the Peters Creek Sanitary Authority that the resolution should have been with the lift station. they had approved, at one point in open court that it would be a lift station, and we were advised that money was not an issue for the lift station. The reason it was resolved with the grinder pumps, because it was represented to the court and to our board that the project was shovel ready, and that the lift station option would substantially delay the construction, which we've learned after the fact is not a true representation.
Well, let me ask you this question. Did the township get, when you build systems, I've probably been involved in over $100 million with systems in my career. The first thing you do is you have to make sure you have a right of entry or you have an easement. If you don't have an easement, did they get easements in this situation?
No, we never agreed to, we never agreed. We revoked the acceptance, when we knew they were going to do the project, that was supposed to be their own sewer system, and their own sewer authority, we wrote to DEP and advised DEP that we would not permit them into our lines without an agreement, and hence the litigation.
You're absolutely correct.
And so I guess the point of the letter is there's some clarifications that need to happen at the planning phase. The gentleman was right, earlier, Mr. Burnworth, that, you know, there is some time until this project's complete. The funding that Union Township has procured, if you will, in the banks, does have some lead time on it yet. And those grant funding programs are amenable to extension. And so I guess the point is that I want to make, and Peters Creek wants to convey, it's not too late to implement the gravity system and the lift station option. And Mr. Levy, you know, extended some details. There is a cost delta. And, you know, perhaps Peters Creek would be willing to pay that cost delta if the township, you know, assigned the grant funding or whatever other funding that was allocated towards the customers. They'd be willing to move the project forward.
Okay, so I see, and again, I'm sorry if I'm talking too much, I do apologize. If the township would go through this, we need to, again, from my perspective, we need to have an analysis of the cost, you know, what the initial cost would be, because as you're well aware, and I'm well aware, the initial cost is basically grant, loan, and, you know, debt, tap fees, which is the local contribution. So we would need to have a calculation. You and TJ can sit down and figure out what the cost would be to do the lift station versus a gravity flow. Because you know as well as I do, when you deal with DEP, so that's what they're gonna look at, what the cost is gonna be in terms of building the system.
Yeah, they'll want to look at the cost effectiveness analysis.
Correct.
They want, the key part that our board is certainly aware of, and as township supervisors are, the ultimate cost to our customers and to your taxpayers, we want that as low as possible. That's not a factor to DEP, but in terms of cost effectiveness, meaning, are you building a Cadillac when a Ford could, you know,
How about a Honda?
do the trip, or a Honda?
Subaru.
What the residents would be paying for the maintenance of their grinder pump. You know, so that's an additional
Well,
cost
if he does it the right, if these gentlemen do it the right way, they'll analyze the cost up and down. So we need to know what the cost would be. Now, how much grant money do we have, Mr. Wade, do you know the grant money?
No, it's your grant money, we don't know.
200,000.
Well, we heard at one point you had 500,000.
No, it's 200,000. Like I said, I made the
So,
phone
do you know
call.
what we have?
It's 200,000.
What is it?
500.
Do we have that in a separate account?
Where's the other
We
300?
have a grant for 500 to put that in.
Well, I'm talking about the LSA.
500,000
You didn't
for
get it.
Mingo, it says 200,000 for the
So we need-
construction of something.
That's part of it, we need to figure out how much grant.
So
money.
that's what we have to do. See, that should have been said, if you
Yeah,
get
it
grant
was,
money.
if I might add, it was represented to Judge Lucas that the grant money was 500,000 in open court and on the record.
I understand, but what would happen, Bernard, is you would have, when you get the grant money, you have to keep that in a separate account. So we'd have to see if it's kept in a separate account. It can't be, you can't take that grant money and put that in general fund.
Yeah, I don't know how the finances were handled, I only know what the testimony was in open court on that issue. And it was represented that it was $500.
Newsletter that was put out by $400,000. So that's why.
I do have a copy of the LSA's grant application and receipt, and it was $200,000.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know how they came up with the 500.
There is a well, this says there's a 500,000.
That's a news, she's looking at a newsletter.
I'm looking at a newsletter that the
Go ahead.
township had printed. and
Go ahead,
sent
Pete.
around.
One other item that needs to get addressed immediately is executing into a service agreement with Peters Creek Sanitary Authority. Because that'll need to be included in a Act 537 plan, as Jason mentioned.
Do we have any, is there any agreements at all between the townships?
No, so there's a couple ways this can be done, and correct me if I'm wrong, gentlemen, but one way to do it is to, your Union Township and you can engineer it and do whatever, and we can help out. The other one is, I think probably the cleanest would be for us to sort of just do the whole project and you would transfer the funds to us, and we would, we would take care of it.
So if we would do that situation, then you would own you'd own the lines, you'd be responsible, is that what you're saying? If we would,
Either.
and if we would turn the project over to you, cause I know there's so you would do, cause the question of ownership of the lines is the issue. You're saying if we let you do it, you'd own the lines, everything, and be responsible.
If we don't do it, we don't.
Yeah, we don't know the lines either way.
I don't, but a lot of times when you you expand the system, and there's debt service on the system, the authority doesn't want to take over the lines because of the issue. I've had that issue before. Am I
No, I
correct,
think
Justin?
we would own it either way. I think it's, you get into these subtleties, which is, well, what if there's a cost increase, who pays for it, who pays there? If we made it real simple and clean, is Union Township provides so much money, and we'll cover the rest.
Cause like I said, I just did Malone Ridge over in Canton, and we own the lines till the debt's paid off.
And, I think TJ's right, and I think reasonable next steps.
Well, Jason, let me know what you're saying. TJ's right, I think, but I think before you do that, we need to figure out which model we're gonna.
Absolutely, and I think, TJ's correct in that, the details of a service agreement, identifying the who, what, when, where, why, and who's going to owe it. That's part of it. The other part is that cost analysis that you had mentioned. Those things happen kind of at the same time. You can't look at one without the other. To get the full picture and to have a full understanding of costs with respect to the authority, costs with respect to the township, including grant funding, as well as costs associated with operation and maintenance of the grinder pump, need to be thrown in that analysis so it's clear for everyone, including DEP, that the lift station and the gravity sewers are cost effective over a 30-year planning period.
So let me ask you this question. Rough estimate, what would it cost to do a lift station? Just rough estimate.
And we've done that analysis leading up to this point for Peters Creek Sewer Authority. To be, in terms of the lift stations that we currently have, mimicking those, on the order of $1.1 million. Significantly higher than the estimate of the grinder pump. However, our board challenge is to take a look at, okay, is there other ways to save our customers money, and utilize perhaps a package, lift station, still provide the same level of service.
What's the package lift station?
Well, lift station, a custom design, concrete vault that, would be constructed in the ground, things like that, versus some lift station that
Shows up on a truck.
that shows up on a truck, if you will, that it still has connection to power, it still has an emergency generator. It's just a pre-packaged lift station, if you will.
Okay.
And that number's around $735,000.
And what's the number for the grinder pump?
And the number for the grinder pump that was our estimate was a little over $500,000.
How many EDUs would be serviced by this lift station line?
Far more than 19.
All
I
right.
mean, we didn't do
Mr. Petak, good point. If you're gonna build a system, we just don't wanna, there was a guy out of RUS, when you deal with RUS, they limit you in terms of capacity you can have in the line. But if we're gonna build a system, I think we need to have excess capacity in case, like Mr. Petak, wherever he's sitting right now.
And again, that was just the initial cost, right?
Yes.
That's not the operating cost.
But he raised a good point, because I
Yeah,
think,
more people to the desk, you know.
because if we could build a system, a line that has enough capacity to take future development, that makes it more valuable. I just negotiated a situation in South Sabine Township with capacity and building lines over there. So that, I think if you're gonna do it, we need to have, that, something we have to consider.
In the gravity option with the lift station, irrespective of package or custom design, is more forgiving in terms of future growth. There's no question.
Okay. Good point, Mr. Petak.
So for the same money, you plan on putting
A
additional.
little bit, it'll be a little bit additional, because.
To help more people, plus help the people, the 19 people, because adding more would lower the fees for everybody.
It does, the more people, the more use you have, the more, less cost is on the owner.
Is there any engineer in the room, like, that believes the project's shovel ready? Like, that believes that,
You don't-
that the grinder pump thing is shovel ready?
It's not, because you can't build a system until you have the rights of ways, either secure it through an easement or secure it through eminent domain.
Just wanted to clarify that's not a shovel. So my other question is,
I don't believe it's shovel ready, Mr. Free. That's
was
my.
the Nike site an option? I see the Nike site here. Is there water at the Nike site? Was that ever really a viable?
We don't know.
We don't know. It was just identified in the service area not initially in a 537 plan, but in the Part 2 permit, there was service shown to the Nike site, and, I apologize, I couldn't read through the blue text. It was identified in the initial 537 plan, it was identified in the Part 2 permit drawings, but it wasn't identified in the latest drawing submitted to PennDOT.
I was here at a meeting when the gentleman from Rob Lane had come in and asked to be added to the system. So I remember that being added. I didn't know that it, you know.
And those, certainly understand that those requests do come in. In order to entertain that, I guess our point was, in terms of implementing the project, providing service to our customers, we're still going to have to take a
But as
couple
much
step
as-
backs.
As much as the
step back.
gentleman on Rob Lane wanted to be added, so do other people, and we could help more than just him by,
And that's part and parcel to what the 537 plan process is all about. Develop a plan, here's your defined service area, here's your defined customers, here's your customer list. Advertise it, have the public review and comment on it. If there are other needs that the township is unaware of, they have an opportunity to come and make the request at that time before it's adopted. And those are typically how those projects.
I don't remember anybody in the workshop for this project that was a resident affected by it being very keen on the grinder pumps. I don't remember any of them thinking the grinder pumps was the best option for them. I don't know if there's any of the residents that are affected by this here now. Was that, I mean, I don't remember you guys verbalizing that you were.
None of us were a big fan of the grinder.
Yeah, I don't remember anybody
Every one of
being
our
at that
neighbors says
workshop that was
absolutely
a
not.
fan of the grinder pump.
We do not want them.
So,
And before, we were told that the township would maintain and repair those grinder pumps. That was the only reason we were like, well, maybe.
From what I can see,
They're
if I
not
was
gonna do
reading
that.
correctly, it was at a maintenance fee. If I was reading it correctly, that was for a maintenance, there was a maintenance fee
Well,
involved.
I can add to that. So I was at that workshop in October, and you are correct, that was the presentation.
Yes.
And then the Union Township made a 180-degree turn and completely switched.
Yes.
And it's somewhat disingenuous, I thought,
I
to the
just,
public.
yeah, I wanted to make sure that I heard from the people affected by it, that, what I was hearing at that meeting at least, that there was nobody keen on
The agreement that was executed in court, the developer's agreement that was signed for the grinder pump option, indicated that that Union Township would purchase the grinder pump, but that the homeowners would maintain it.
Yeah,
And that was the signed agreement that we all agreed.
At one point, I remember in that meeting that the township was gonna own the grinder pumps and maintain them, and then it switched to, the township was gonna buy them, but then the resident would own and maintain after that. It moved around a bit.
Yeah, so I think where we stand today, Mr. Maple and others, is that in addition to sort of a developer knocking on your door and saying, I wanna go do this, you've got a typical time frame. There's one extra thing that's unique about this project is that you and Mr. Donato need to work with Judge Lucas to correct the record, the legal record there.
That's something we do, but I got a question. Sorry, good point. Steve, I just showed you those drawings, and your name again is?
Eric Fritz.
Eric
Fritz.
gave me, Eric Fritz. Are those construction drawings?
After my 30-second review, I'm gonna lean towards no.
I've seen construction drawings over the years. Those aren't construction drawings.
I do not believe they are.
And I remember even in some of the meetings that we had, that there was concerns with residents losing their electricity and so forth, and what would happen with these grinder pumps. Whether the township owned them or the resident owned them, what happens when you lose, and there were some people that said that was a continual thing. I remember some of the board members discussing that maybe we'll get some generators and have the road crew take them from, but yeah, so that was another concern. But if I heard you guys wrong, I just wanted to clarify what I thought I had heard, that you guys weren't really keen on the grinder pumps, whether the township owned them or y'all owned them. Okay, so that's your people that are affected.
Just to let you know, we do have a submission from Sean Odell to Ryan Contestable where he states, we never got to the point where we prepared construction drawings or specifications.
Well, yeah, Sean Odell says they never prepared it.
Holy cow.
So it wasn't shovel ready then?
It's not shovel ready,
All right.
by the words of Harshman Engineering.
So I'm just trying, we have another half hour to go. So Phil, you want to present, can you prepare a court order to modify that situation?
Yeah, obviously if
I'll
the
consent.
agreement can be modified the agreement by itself says that we can modify it in writing.
Okay.
So I don't even know that we need a court order, but we may want to have Judge Lucas understand that there's been a change.
Let me ask you another question. I got something from Breeden's office the other day about paying for the mediation.
We have that on our agenda for
Why
our next
do-
meeting tonight.
This is the because remember the court ordered us to pay mediation fees to Breeden?
Yes,
Can you explain
as
that? Because I wasn't
part
part
of, as what happened was, as part of the sanctions that the court issued against Union Township because they had reneged on the agreement for the lift station, the court could not order Union Township to fund a lift station, which was twice expensive as the grinder pump option. So, but as part of the sanctions, Union Township was ordered to pay all of Tom Breeland's mediation fees, and Peters Creek was not to
Let's
pay those.
discuss the court costs. That was a lot of the court costs was re-entering into the mediation because Union Township was deemed to have reneged on the first mediation.
So now
Yes.
Okay, I just make sure we all understood that.
Yeah.
So what we need to do is, okay, and again, for Mr. Labey, I guess, and Mr. Kovach, you guys are the head honchos over there.
No, I'm not. No, we've got a really strong board here.
I know, but I talked to Mr. Kovach, and he's, every so often, he's a good man.
So, to move forward, it sounds like the two engineers need to get together and work out sort of what the two costs
Two
are,
attorneys,
both
the two
capital and
engineers.
operating, and then Union Township needs to make a decision on which option they wanna go, and then we'll stand by to support whatever path you decide to go down.
Is there any residents within that system that are an objective from moving towards what we're discussing? So there's-
I just had a question. Would it be good for the resident, because I'm among others that are directly affected. Could we write a letter stating that?
Absolutely, I think we'd almost need a workshop with you whenever we do come up with, I think that would entail a workshop with the residents.
Something in
affected
writing
to
showing
really
that we don't.
explain, cause it's been moved around so much, there's some people that are within that system that aren't here that wouldn't even know what the end, so, yeah, we would probably notify all of you guys and then do a workshop with you, but at least with the ones in attendance, is there anyone within that particular system that is an objection from going through with what we're, talking about?
Well, you have to make a decision first. We have the option. I already stated that I want something that's gonna work.
Yeah.
Something
when you're 90 years old, you're not worried about
If I make it there, yeah.
maintenance,
If
like
I
you
make
can
it
just
that
flush your
long,
toilet like
no.
everybody else.
Okay, anything else, okay, go ahead, Mr.
I
Coe.
was just wondering how many Finley residents are here tonight.
Who's here from Finley Alvarado
Here.
Road?
Yeah.
We have Mr. Burnworth, Mr. Peacock. Your name, sir, and before Mr. Peacock.
Matt Howe, I'm with Tracy Miller on Finley Oregon Road.
Or she's with you.
Yeah.
He's with her.
All right, ma'am, your name?
Whatever.
Tiffany Lippert, I'm right across from you on my east side.
Okay.
I'm 3990 Erie.
What I'd like to do, when you guys, is some, before you leave, I'd like you guys to just sign that paper, your name and address and phone number. Okay, anybody else who lives on that road? Mr. Barna, sorry.
I'm here, yes. Any time frame on either option?
Well, I think it's like we have to, these gentlemen, I guess Mr. TJ and, what does TJ stand for, by the way?
Thomas,
Okay,
my middle name, Jacob.
all right. TJ and Mr. Stanton,
Thank you, yeah.
I can't remember his first name.
Jason.
Jason.
Yeah.
TJ and Jason are gonna have to meet and discuss, so we need to get this off moving. So what we need to do when you do a project, they need to come up with an idea that's gonna be functional. And then after they come up with this functional, maybe we can secure, can we do, is the H2O grants done and over with right now?
Those PAH2O grants were due December 21st.
Okay,
So that due date's passed. But there are other
Commonwealth financing?
Commonwealth financing type grants that are coming out this year that we
Andrew
may
Cruisen's on
qualify
this
for. They
page,
haven't been
don't
announced as of yet, but we anticipate them coming out.
I think Commonwealth financing gives like $500,000, up to $500,000, something like that. Is that correct? So what we have to do, Mr. Barney, is we have to move on this quickly because there are time limitations to apply for grants. And basically what we need to do is we need to get, and I've dealt with both of these firms over my career. And basically both, I use the word competent, and that's how I refer to professionals, competent or not competent. But they're both competent firms who I have dealt with over the year. They're both sewage. I dealt in sewage and water, so I don't think we can have any better firms than these two firms to give us guidance of what to do. And so, go ahead.
Are we leaning on 18 months or 48 months? Or somewhere, I mean, like,
No,
what do we think?
what do you, I don't know, they're the, okay, so if we get something done within the next 60 days, what time frame are we looking at?
And I'll couch this next statement with a lot of the cost analysis, the annual operating costs, capital costs. Our board has asked us to prepare while
they offered that at our meeting at the.
the litigation was ongoing. So a lot of those documents exist, so we're not starting from scratch. What I suggest is that we share those with banks and engineers, with TJ. We look at those, we critique those estimates. Again, TJ hasn't seen them yet. Our board has. They've asked us for those to educate them during the process. And I think a graphic as to the final service area, as well as the key elements that need to be resolved to move it forward. I think 60 days, coming back here in 60 days is reasonable, because a lot of those documents exist.
Okay, so,
Do you see a big time difference between one project to the other? I mean, it's
Well, you
gonna
have
take
a
what it's
number
gonna
here.
take, but it's
Yeah,
not elongating the project.
And attached to our letter is our timeline.
So whether we go with grinder pumps or a lift station, it's not a considerable difference in time.
Correct.
Probably about the same.
But
It's
the same
about
amount
the
of
same.
time.
Yeah.
so, but
I
Mr.
figured it's- they
Mr.
didn't
Barr wants to
have-
know, okay, so we come back, what time frame
630 days.
to
That's
break? So we come, when we could break ground on this event? Give me a guess.
No, you would be complete, construction would start or be complete?
Complete.
Complete at 630 days. Now, with that, let's talk about that. You earmarked 270 days for the DEP to approve something. Some of these things could be sped up, but maybe it doesn't take 600 days.
Exactly. And again, that's,
You're saying either way.
Either option.
It's gonna be that.
we're looking at
relatively
2
down
years
time.
from now until the system's operational. Could that be facilitated quicker? I think so. Since a lot of these documents and a lot of the discussion points already exist that were discussed tonight, that front end portion, I think speeds that along. Since we already have 537 plan approval, I think that, you know, the 270 days that we've allocated for that in here, I think that's more than generous. Because it's not a new topic for them. It's not a new project for them. If it were a new project somewhere else in the township, 270 days would probably be reasonable. So I guess my point is, we're still 2 years out from being operational, but there's, in the timeline, irrespective of either alternative, it can be some of those tasks can be truncated and done earlier.
Kind of question, if you go ahead with the lift station, don't you have to modify the Act 537?
Yes, and you need to modify the Act 537 plan anyway to, as pointed out in the letter with the color code, you need to modify it anyway to correct the customer base, the address listing and things like that. So you have to do it anyway, I guess my point.
Because
There is some correspondence from Harshman through DEP to add the additional homes on there. The board needs to do some research on that. But it's also my understanding when you modify the Act 537 from gravity to forced main, you're canceling the grinder. So if the township would not accept the forced main lift station, you gotta go back and start all over with the gravity. Have you guys applied for the modified?
No, we haven't. I guess my point is that the next step, these cost analysis would allow the township to make the decision, do we move forward under the current mediated settlement agreement of low pressure, or do we implement the grinder lift station? If the township response to that is, we like the gravity sewer and lift station option better, they would authorize an amendment to the 537 plan that straightens the customer base out, adds the customers that wants in, identified as the preferred alternative, includes the you know, the service agreement. That would all go out for a 30-day review, public review comment period, and at the end of the day, the supervisor would need to adopt that.
But I think right now what we need to do, we don't really know what's going on until you guys sit down and figure out what's happening, okay, in terms of calculation.
Correct, yes. The 537 plan's step 2 of a multi-step process. Step
All right.
1 is the cost estimate.
Mr. Lundstrom, do you have something to say?
Yeah, the part I don't understand here is you guys keep saying about the grinder pumps. You got 19 residents, 0 of them want the grinder pumps. It's their properties that will ultimately decrease in value and resale value if you use grinder pumps. Where is the problem here? They don't want grinder pumps. You guys are not listening to that.
We are.
Pay attention. It doesn't sound like it. Pay attention. They have been lied to for the last 2 years.
And that's why.
Been fed all kind of wrong information. I don't see where the problem's at. They don't want them.
I've been
So where's the
taught,
problem?
I've been taught from my experience, grinder pumps are a bad thing to have in your yard, okay?
And it'll lower their property values. You want
Because-
your property values lowered?
Because if you have a grinder pump, what happens is they break down at times, and basically.
And although I've been to all your meetings and all the meetings here, I wanted my fellow board members to kind of hear from them, that, you know, that's what I was hearing. I was hearing that none of them were happy with the grinder pump option, and I just wanted my fellow board members to kind of hear from them that that's, and assure that that's what I was hearing from them, that they don't want the grinder pump.
So Mr. Lundstrom, what we have to do, in terms of DP and both engineers, we have to do an analysis of what's most cost. They'll tell you the same. So that's what we have to do, correct, gentlemen?
Yes.
Well, I was just saying, the 2-year timeframe wouldn't be a problem if it's an efficient system. Finally, after 40 years of not of being promised sewage, if if it works, we're all for it, cause we're stuck right now. We can't sell our homes, we can't buy homes, we can't do anything if sewage lays into our basement because of failed systems. So, 2 years to get a properly working system, yeah, it's a long time, but it'll be done and correct.
Particularly if it's still 2 years with a non-properly working system.
Exactly.
It's the same if it's the same 2 years, it's 2 years. But one is a final fix, one's gonna have
Not a
continual
big deal.
maintenance.
We don't-
They were.
We have,
One second, lady in the back, Steve, this lady's held it down for, then you, go ahead, next state.
I was just saying, and again, with the grinder pumps, I could tell this did a complete flip, that we, the residents, then would be responsible for these repairs, and I won't agree to that, I will not agree to that, it's not something I'm saying I want, and that's, my husband and I, we're senior citizens now, how much money do we have to put back for each time they stop working? This doesn't make sense.
Okay. Steve, tell me.
Yeah, I have one thing, we're talking about the costing, we just received a memo from our state representative, Andrew Kuzma, wants to know what kind of projects we have and for funding and so forth. I think we ought to contact him immediately too, to get on some list to see what type of funding would be available, even for this project or any other projects too.
Reached out a couple of times to see what the township's priorities for is. see if
Right,
can
and he
help us
wants
through
some type of answer, it says by Friday of this week,
Well,
but.
most of those, grants and stuff, the filing date is.
Right, well, yeah, that's what I'm saying, but maybe we could get something filed in for a grant or something for this project too now, and file it now, but one thing about it, they're not gonna approve it overnight, or anything, it's gonna take a while before they'd approve it.
No, but he can.
But he
look
could
around,
stick
look
it
for
in,
Channels of what's out there.
Right, well, yeah, and he could, and I just think it'd
He
be
was
worthwhile to
gracious
send
of it.
him, tell him what we would like him to consider, investigating, see if there would be any monies available toward this project. That would be a help too, to get more funding.
One other issue we have, I know this is about Finnegan Raymond, I know this is a separate topic. There's another problem with a place called Mingo Circle. And that's, I looked at that, and if we would do that, do you cover that sewage area, Mr. Levy, or is that?
No, I think that's outside of our service areas, that's like that.
I believe so.
So what service area would it be in then? Is it any service area?
There is no service area for that.
Can we make that your service area?
I don't think it's close enough.
Well, but they could take,
Engineering did a 537.
if you would do a package treatment plant, they could manage the package treatment plant, correct?
Anything's possible, we'd have to look at
The
that.
reason why I'm saying, because it came up at the last meeting, so at the last meeting, I decided to look at the engineer's files for the Mingo Circle project. Now, the Mingo Circle project, I think the last Act 537 plan was, I think, what, 2018, 2019, TJ?
I think that's correct, Dennis, yeah.
And basically, that project, the cost was, it was like 104 homes. And they're talking about doing a package treatment plant there, and it's basically the tap fee would be $4,800 plus the user rate, including O and M of debt, would be like $106. Thing, so.
That was for how many years ago?
5 years ago, 4 years ago. So I'm just saying, maybe we need to get this thing off the ground, because these people need to get this going, but somewhere down the line, maybe, since you guys are in the sewage business, maybe we should start negotiation or start discussions between that system, and like I said, maybe do a package treatment plant, and then have that part of your system, but again, that's a different story.
It is a different story, there's, we'd have to get, the other communities in our wastewater treatment agreement to agree to that, we'd have to look at if it's physically possible.
Well, I'm not talking about taking the line, I'm talking about having a package treatment.
Oh, okay, yeah, well, we have to look at that.
Okay, I'm just saying, that's, people there have issues, like 104 homes, and again, I'm trying to get that off the ground, because people have issues there. So,
I don't think our board really knows much about that.
Well, after we get this thing going, we should discuss that next, okay?
Is it Peters Township and,
That's in Union Township.
yeah, the Peters Township takes from where Eagle Club Road is and Mingo Church Road is,
Maybe
that's
it's-
where it stops.
It's maybe a different watershed, it might be, Peters Township.
No,
It's not in the Peters Creek Sanitary Authority
right,
watershed.
nobody has,
Yeah.
any sanitary there, so.
Yeah, Union Township has 4 different things, I think. You have Peters Creek, you have.
Visa.
You have.
South